This is the Observations Podcast for Sunday, the 28th of July, 2024. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Dale Franks.
I'm Michael Wade.
And we apologize for being a little bit late today because we had a little miscommunication. My understanding was we weren't doing a podcast today. I just got back home. Fortunately, I just got back home from grocery shopping. I was here 5 minutes, at this point, 11 minutes ago, Michael texted me and said, "Hey, are we doing this?" And I went, "Oh no, I am not prepared." So had to start from scratch, turn my computer on, get everything set up, everything running. Looks like my volume is a little hot for some reason. So why is that? Why am I so freaking loud? So we are going to have to do a little, the stuff that I usually do in the half hour before podcast, I'm going to have to do now. And what it looks like is my microphone is running way hot. So we are going to have to go into device properties. Actually, it doesn't look like it's running hot. It looks like my volume is set to 95, which is where it's supposed to be. So, okay. And it's already started. First comment in chat. You're as prepared as Kamala. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I that is indubitably true. So, Michael was gone. You were gone last week, right? Your vacation deal. Mm-hmm. But we are all back, and in the space of 48 hours, we went from I will never leave the presidency, I will never leave the campaign, I am here forever, deal with it, to, hey, I'm out of here, folks.
I have no video of you.
You have no video of me? Oh, well, that's because in Zoom,
you didn't turn it on.
I didn't turn the video on in Zoom. So, so if you want to see me, if it's really important to you, there you go.
I prefer it.
All right, there you go. Now you can see what's going on. Oh, by the way, apologies. Same background as we had 2 weeks ago because I didn't want to spend the time looking for a different video background to throw up here. So
I think we're cool.
Apologies for having the same background twice in a row. There is a lot to unpack from Biden's departure from the race. There's a lot to unpack about Kamala Harris. But let's start with Biden dropping out himself. I don't know if any of this is true. So this may be a wild conspiracy theory because nobody would ever go on the record and admit to this publicly. But the word is, from people who have spoken to, of course, unnamed sources, again, nobody's going to say this outright, is that they basically, first of all, major donors went to Joe Biden and says, "We're not giving you a dime."
Right.
Second of all, the talk is that some group of leading Democrats went to Joe Biden and said, "We'll 25th Amendment your ass and get you out of the office." If you
Schumer, Pelosi, Jeffries, Obama.
So Joe Biden sort of had to bow to the inevitable and turn it over to Kamala Harris. Like I said,
so who's president right now?
That's another thing we'll have to unpack. But,
right? Do we even know?
Yeah, well, I mean, technically it's Joe Biden, but really, I don't know. What concerns me about this, if true, is that they've now just used the 25th Amendment as a blackmail cudgel, which is not the way that is supposed to work.
Right.
And I'm a bit surprised. I guess Joe Biden is a good enough of a Democrat to realize that they would do it to him one way or another because they didn't want him to run, because they thought he would lose. And I think it would have been fascinating if he'd have said, "Well, then go ahead and do it then." Because that is the nuclear option, right? And by the
Yes.
way, 25th Amendment says that the vice president and a majority of the cabinet must certify to Congress that the president is incapable of performing his duties.
Right.
That-
And then it's just a majority vote in Congress, I believe.
It's a majority vote in Congress if the president contests it.
Right.
And there's no way that the reason it's a nuclear option is that, okay, it would work. It would get him out of the race. It would reset everything. But now who's your nominee going to be? Because if you wanted to be Kamala Harris, she now has a big knife with her fingerprint sticking out of Joe Biden's back. And I think it would have been fascinating if he would have forced them to do that. He didn't. And so now Kamala Harris, who did not receive a single presidential nomination vote in any primary
Ever.
is now the presumptive nominee.
Mm-hmm.
They just pulled a switch right at the end, and apparently this is how they're going to save democracy.
I mean, we predicted it. We told them. We said that they were going to try to pull the Torricelli option. And that's what they did.
And so now she's the candidate, and she's having her nice little honeymoon bump. The race is now
Which it
reset.
hasn't been much.
Yeah, let's go to point number 2, which is she has consistently always polled horribly, even against Donald Trump. And by horribly, I mean 10 points behind Joe Biden. So what do they think the electorate is going to do to change their minds about her? I mean, whenever she ran for president in 2016, she didn't even make it to Iowa, for cripe's sake.
Yeah, that's right. When Tulsi Gabbard entered her in that debate, she pulled out right before Iowa, and she was polling at 1 or 2%. I think the highest she ever got was like 4%. And by the time Iowa was coming around, she was at less than 1%. So she's never received a single Democratic delegate vote. She has not appealed to Democratic voters. She went straight to the delegates themselves and basically cajoled them into them giving her the votes instead of Biden. And she secured enough of them, supposedly, to be able to win at the virtual nomination thing that the Democrats are going to do. And I believe that the first vote does not allow for the superdelegates to vote. It's only the straight delegates.
Yeah, that's correct. Superdelegates don't
So
weigh in
she has
until
a
the
good
second
chance of securing this nomination.
What has been fascinating ever since she was made the presumptive nominee is that there seems to be a concentrated effort on the part of the media to erase her past record. Last week, the big thing
Literally
was,
erase.
Yeah,
literally erase.
last week, the claim was that Harris was never the border czar, and it even got so it got so bad that Axios, who called Harris a border czar whenever she was first appointed. Let me go to screen share, which also, by the way, not set up because I did no prep. But that is the thing I wanted to talk about. Editor's note: this article has been updated and clarified to note that Axios was among the news outlets that incorrectly labeled Harris a border czar in 2021. And no link, of course, to the original article. But
Right.
Somebody put together CNN, NBC, CBS news reports since 2021, and then juxtaposed them with news reports from this last week, where you have the same people on CNN or CBS saying, yes, well, border czar Kamala Harris has done so and so and so and so. Border czar Kamala Harris plans to visit the border, blah, 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 blah. And then this week is, well, of course, she was never the border czar. No such term exists in the United States government, which is technically true. She was never appointed border czar because there's no such job.
Right.
It's a colloquial term that everyone used.
It's really an inside the beltway term, to be honest. But yeah, that's exactly right. Everybody called her that because that's what we've been calling these politicians who get put in charge of specific areas of interest. The border was handed over to her by the Biden administration. She's done zero, has never even actually been to the border. Yes, she was the border czar. It just trying to pretend otherwise is just, it's stupid. And it's so obviously water carrying for the Democrats that, I mean, apparently all the stops have been pulled. The media is all out to push the Democrat nominee over the finish line. So they're just going to change their reporting. They're going to retroactively change the past.
Well, I tweeted this past week. Sean Davis, tweeted that editor's note from Axios, and I thought it would be helpful to rewrote it or to rewrite it.
That's good,
and that's exactly what we're going through. And the other fascinating thing has been that the Democrats came out with this, that they sent out to, basically Democratic politicians and spokesmen and whatever. But clearly it made it out to the press because they began reciting this word for word.
And almost in the same order.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think...
This is journalist all over again.
Yeah, I mean, there is no way... I don't think that anyone can make the argument that the media is not fundamentally corrupt.
Right.
And why should they be different than any other institution that exists anywhere in the American
James
political
Buchanan
class?
won a Nobel Prize in economics for this very idea of public choice theory. And he was concentrating on politicians themselves, people in places of power within the government structure, and how they're no better at denying themselves, the ability to give themselves gains, self-dealing essentially, than anybody else. I mean, they're no more honest. They're no more patriotic. They're no more respectable. They're just people.
Yeah, this idea that we have that there's something ultimately lacking in self-interest, fundamentally, about the incentives that affect government decisions or media decisions or anything. I mean, none of these people are pure as the driven snow.
Right. I mean, Milton Friedman was pointing this out 50 years ago. Matter of fact, when he and his wife did that PBS show, Freedom to Choose, I believe it was, they talked explicitly about this, is that the problem with politics is that we don't incentivize the right or wrong people, it doesn't even matter, to do the right thing. It doesn't matter if they're good people or bad people. We don't incentivize them to do the right thing. And I don't know of any answers of how to do that. He didn't have any. And I don't know that we'd come up with any, at least not in the last 50 years. But yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, Buchanan was exactly right that everybody is self-interested, period. And having some power and self-interest is going to drive you, or at least some of them, eventually towards self-service. I mean, that's a natural thing that's going to happen. It doesn't require any sort of nefarious, intention. It's just human nature.
Yeah, but it does begin to seem nefarious whenever you start seeing something like this. This is Scientific American.
Oh God, yeah.
Scientific American. As the daughter of a cancer researcher, Kamala Harris would bring a lifelong familiarity with science to the presidency. I didn't check on who authored this particular article, but I assume it was this fella, Trofim Lysenko, who proved with geometric logic that genetic memory did exist. And so, okay, well, fine. As the daughter of a cancer researcher, okay, how about as the daughter of a commie economist?
Yeah, right.
What familiarity did that bring her? But
there's this comedian out there.
It's the propagandization that just goes to almost every public organ of information. And look, most people want to be propagandized, as I've said before. It's great if you're propagandized. You know what you're supposed to think. You know what you're supposed to say. You can never say anything that will break the political consensus that has built up. This is the acceptable range of ideas. You can never possibly get yourself in trouble by simply spouting the propaganda. It's easier for most people. And look, quite frankly, most of the policy arguments that the Democrats make, I find, are uniquely tuned to the left side of the bell curve, let's put it that way, because they depend on low information voters, and low information voters are the most easily propagandized. And in conjunction with propaganda, and I can already tell you the kind of campaign that they are going to run for Kamala Harris, and they are going to do everything they can to keep every event that she goes to as scripted and as set up as possible, to do everything they can to prevent her from displaying who she really is to the American people. Because the more people see of her, the less they like her.
That's right. Yeah, she's not... well, I mean, like we started out saying, I mean, she gathered no interest in the Democratic primaries in 2016. That she's not well liked. She's not even well liked in California. She has no real accomplishment to her life that she can actually base on her own efforts. Willie Brown gave her
that depends,
a career.
That depends on how you define efforts.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, fair enough. So I was just thinking, when you brought that up, about, with the Scientific American thing, what they said, I don't know if you know who Kathleen Madigan is. She's a comedian. She's really funny. Yeah. And, she back in, I want to see 2008 or so, when Hillary Clinton was running for the nomination against Obama, and she was like, "Well, she'd be great. I mean, she was in the White House all that time." And her dad was like, "Oh, really? So can I call up my plumber's wife? He's not able to come over, but I can call her, and she's going to come over and fix the plumbing." I mean, what? How does that make her an expert in plumbing? Right? It's the same thing. Like, okay, so she grew up with a scientist father. She clearly doesn't know any fucking science. She doesn't even seem to have studied any. Matter of fact, I don't know what the hell she studied. She seems as dull as a 60-year-old blade. I mean, I don't know what she possibly brings to the table. She's not intelligent. She's not bright. She can't speak. She certainly can't think.
She's super...
I don't know what good she does.
And she's super off-putting, personally.
Yeah.
Just her...
I mean, she's not as bad as Hillary, but she just comes across as so fake and so out there. Like, who the fuck are you, woman?
And the first thing her campaign is doing are having separate calls for white women,
Yeah, I
black
saw
women,
that.
black men, white men. And I thought it was fascinating seeing this post here.
The awfuls, yeah.
Time to do our part, white women. Black women cannot do it on their own.
How fucking condescending.
Yeah.
That's just unbelievably racist and condescending.
It's pure distilled white savior complex.
Mm-hmm.
And as they posted this, I can only imagine that this was what was running through their mind.
Alici.
There you go. That's the whole thing right there. It's everything about this has just been manufactured. And by the way, let's not pretend that this switch from Biden to Kamala took the Democratic Party by surprise. Joe Biden might have only announced it last Sunday. But the fact is, this had to have been planned.
They've been mulling it for a while.
Yeah, this
and one of the plans they had was to try to get Kamala out of there.
Yeah, but
there was no way. They just couldn't do it.
Yeah, there's just no way. So before Joe Biden announced, they already had a strategy in place to do that changeover. So they knew that Joe Biden was going probably a week before he actually announced it.
I mean, they basically said that, right?
Yeah, so I would say that 2 weeks ago, when all of the mega donors just said, yeah, we're just not going to give Joe Biden any money. It's just a waste of money. He's going to lose this election. The writing was on the wall there. And the only question was, how do we do the changeover? And as far as I can
what are the machinations? Not what's the best choice? How do we do the machinations?
Yeah, and as far as I can tell, they waited until they had a changeover plan to turn this over to Kamala Harris before Joe Biden announced he was going. And so you have this unbelievably smooth switch from Biden to Harris, and they want us to believe that this all happened organically over the course of 24 hours.
Right.
No,
Whatever.
It didn't. They ran Joe off. Well, the donors ran Joe off. And, they could have had a competitive primary. They decided not to. It was going to be Joe and Joe all the way, because Joe is the one guy that beat Trump in 2020, so he's the one guy who can do it again. The trouble with that is in 2020, nobody knew anything about what kind of president Joe Biden was going to be. It's become painfully clear. Well,
some of us knew.
You and I did, because we've watched Joe Biden since, the freaking
shit. I've
80s.
been aware of him since the 70s.
And
I mean, as much as I knew in the 70s.
Yeah, and so we knew that Joe Biden was going to be a disaster from the jump. Most people didn't, but they've learned. The last 4 years have been instructive, and he was not going to beat Donald Trump. I think they would have preferred someone other than Kamala Harris, but there was just no way to dump her. She's the sitting vice president, and she's the nominee for vice president.
And really, who could they pick? Gavin Newsom? He's not even popular in his own state. I don't know who else they could have picked. Gretchen Whitmer? Are you kidding me?
Josh Shapiro.
Josh Shapiro might have had a shot, except that he would be running on the Democratic ticket, and that's automatically going to alienate, because he's Jewish. He's going to automatically alienate the Dearbornists and anybody else
pretty much
who hates
hang up Michigan in that case.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, they may have to hang up Michigan anyway. So I don't know how it's looking. I don't know how the race is going to go. And of course, polling is never a great way of looking at things this close to an event. It's only been a week. It'll probably be at least another week, probably 2, before we get some sense of what.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think mid-August is when we'll have a good sense.
Well, here's the trouble: we've got
on.
1 or 2 weeks lead time is the problem, and so
Yeah.
in 2 weeks we'll get a sense of how Kamala Harris was doing during this honeymoon period. It's not really going to be until September, I think, that we start seeing any sort of real movement in the
That's
polls.
awfully late for a brand new candidate to start gaining momentum.
Well, the thing is, there is polling about her against Trump that was taken before Joe Biden jumped out of the office. But the trouble with that is, at that point, Joe Biden is the nominee, right? The presumptive nominee. Kamala Harris is just vice president. So this, in a two-way heads-to-head, if it was Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, how would you vote? That is a highly speculative question, because it's not what's actually happening, right? So you're asking them, so in an alternate world where Spock has a beard, how would you vote? Well, does it matter what I answer? Now the answer matters, or it'll certainly matter next week after she formally receives the Democratic nomination, which presumably you will, because somehow she managed to get a majority of the delegates in less than 24 hours on her side. It's a miracle. And so she's the presumptive nominee. And everybody is playing along and pretending that this is some sort of, organic event, when this has clearly been so well planned out that, the day after Joe dropped out, so on that Monday, she signed the paperwork to change the Biden-Harris campaign to the name to the Harris for President campaign, and make her the head of the campaign, so that she gets to keep all of the money that was donated to Joe Biden.
To Biden, right.
Now, if she had
there's some questions about whether that was legal or not. I have no idea. I don't even have a clue.
Yeah, federal election law. However, I think it is presumptively legal, because she is the vice presidential nominee. And so now she's becoming the presidential nominee.
I would buy that argument, yeah.
So we're basically making a change on the ticket. But she was on the ticket, right? And now she's still on the ticket. So she gets to keep Joe's, I think it was $81 million. It
was more than that, because she supposedly made $81 million in the day or two after she took over from small donors. Although there's been some interesting speculation about that.
Oh yeah, we'll get into Act Blue in a little bit, because that's important as well. But it was, I think, at least presumptively legal.
It was a significant amount.
Yeah, but it was presumptively legal for her just to switch over and to take all of Joe's existing money from his campaign and just transfer it to her campaign, as because it is, I guess, the successor organization. If she was not on the ballot, that money would have been lost.
Yeah, I think that's right. The fact that it's a pair of president and vice president, I think, is what makes it okay. I don't know. FEC laws are rather opaque. The enforcement is not exactly always consistent. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but if they'd have had to say, okay, this is now the Gavin Newsom for president campaign.
Right. That would have been a much different deal. Yes.
Yeah, that wouldn't have flied. And
they would have still figured out something.
Yeah, I'm sure they would have. However, the way that they did it was legally the easiest way. And this does give you the idea of continuity. And they didn't have to invoke the 25th, so Kamala Harris doesn't have to stab Joe Biden in the back. Because that would have been look, for the Democrats, the 25th Amendment would have been just as much of a nightmare as, and I tell you what would have been hilarious, because in Congress, let's say Kamala Harris had said, okay, he's too crazy to be president, and got the cabinet to agree to it. And Joe Biden said, I'm not too crazy to be president, and this is a coup. Okay, well, now we have to go to the Congress. And I think it would have been hilarious now at that point, because the Republicans do at least control the House, for Republicans to have enough of a majority to say,
he's fine.
Yeah, he's fine. Yeah, this is all a bunch of
everybody playing games.
This is all a bunch of BS. And then they'd be stuck with Joe, and Kamala Harris would have no political future whatsoever. Because now she's the vice president who tried to stab the president in the back, and when the 25th Amendment.
You know what else I find interesting is that they won't say, the White House won't say, why Joe has dropped out.
Yeah, even his speech that he gave, that presumably was to explain why he dropped out, was just basically his excuse was, it's best for the country if I drop out.
Right. How? Why? Why are you dropping out, Joe? Oh, but it's definitely not because of mental issues. Okay.
No, look, honestly.
Then what are they?
Look, honestly, yeah. We all know it wasn't mental issues. That's the thing. There is this thing that is said publicly that we're just supposed to accept. However, as we accept it, we nod and wink because we're all in on the joke. Right. Because we all know that the reason why they replaced Joe as the nominee was because he was losing to Trump and losing badly.
That's right. And it was because of the debate where he showed his true colors, and they were not black and white. They weren't even gray. They were multicolored hues of nothing. He was not capable. And that's why he was forced out. It scared the bejesus out of the donors, out of the elites in the Democratic Party. So they forced him out.
Yeah, clearly,
because they knew he was going to lose.
However, what they've left unanswered is, well, if he can't be president for another 4 years, how do we know that he's still competent to be president now?
Yeah, that's a sort of scary thing, actually, especially since it's not just until the election. I mean, he's got another 6 months, 5-ish months.
Yes, as we head towards war in the Middle East, which again, we'll get to. However, getting back to the polling, I think it is instructive just to take, and all polls are basically just this, a snapshot of where we are. So here's
most of them are only about like between 500 and 600 people. The better ones are around 1,000.
Yeah, so this is what our polling snapshot looks like here. Trump in the polling average is up by 1.7, 1.8 in a 5-way race. His favorability ratings are up 0.5% above, or 0.5 point above Kamala Harris, so that's good, I guess. She's, as unpopular as Hillary. The betting odds, however, are a lot more immediate, although they are, again, a snapshot. And the betting odds...
And they're volatile.
And they are really volatile. And they're not always true. I mean, the betting odds had Hillary Clinton as near as didn't matter.
Right up until the first week of November, yep.
Yeah, 90%, right? So, but still, Trump at 54%, Kamala at 39.2%, which we can more or less translate into a percentage probability that they will win at this particular point in time. Of course, this is not when the election will be. Trump doing well.
And there's a lot of time between now and November.
Yeah, Trump up by 1 point or more almost in all of the swing states against Harris currently. But so many of these polls go back to Harris being a notional contender, not the actual contender. So,
yeah. Well, like you said, we're still not going to know for a few weeks how the switch has really been calculated in and absorbed by the electorate. It's going to take a little while.
Yeah, and I think the thing to do now is to take all of these things that Harris is saying now and just to make commercials that just show the things that Harris has been saying. She said this week, well, I am against a ban on fracking. Really? We have video of you saying exactly the opposite on multiple occasions.
In fact, it was on our campaign website.
Yeah, well, that stuff is getting harder.
I'm sure it's been scrubbed since then.
That stuff is getting harder to find, but the internet is forever, my friend. So, all of this video is available. We can actually take a look at what she's saying she believes now and what she has been for years saying she believes. And we can point out a lot of differences between those opinions.
And again, she's not very smart. She is not capable of... Look, Bill Clinton could make you believe that, well, I may have said it then, but what I really meant was this, and that's where I am now. Like, he had this amazing way of making you believe that he was never really that place. He was just kind of there, and he was just thinking out loud, and now he's really solidified on here. I mean, consummate politician, probably one of the best politicians I've ever seen in my life. She is not that. She's horrible. She is not a good politician, a retail politician. She does not know how to reach people.
She comes off as weird. I mean, she comes off as
condescending,
deeply weird
and like sort of aloof.
Yeah, and then there's that odd cackling thing that she does.
Yeah, when she gets nervous. I mean, the bottom line, she's just not very smart. And she just isn't.
And the thing is, it comes out at the most inopportune moment.
Right.
I mean, it's literally, it's horrible that these children are murdered. Okay.
What's wrong with you, woman?
Yeah, I mean, she's weird, but yes, you are right. She is in equal measures arrogant and ignorant.
Yes.
And, Tulsi...
I mean, she's the Gelman effect and written large. She's like
Dunning-Kruger. Dunning-Kruger.
I mean, Dunning-Kruger. Yeah, that's right. Not Gelman.
And like you said, it took 30 seconds for Tulsi Gabbard to utterly destroy her.
Oh, yeah. And she's...
But that was then. This is now. And
how much you want to bet that
the Democrats are nothing if not disciplined?
Well, that's true, but I guarantee that Trump gets Tulsi Gabbard into a PSA at some point, or not a PSA, a campaign video. And matter of fact, if I was the Trump organization, I would be running what Tulsi said. Not necessarily now. I think you want to time it right. You want to wait a little while. But I would be hammering her with that debate little snippet a lot. Yeah. Especially in the swing states.
In 2020, even Democrats knew that Kamala Harris wasn't trustworthy.
Yeah.
And just play it. But it may not be the time to do that yet.
Not yet, no.
I think you got to hold your powder dry, and you got to wait.
Has that not been amazing that Trump, of all fucking people, has been keeping his powder dry? I'm really amazed at how disciplined he's been. I mean, he can never be all that disciplined, but
he has started.
Considering how he was in 2016 and 2020, he's done a pretty good job of letting the Democrats fuck up themselves.
Yeah, he has talked about her in his campaign rallies, and he has pointed these things out. But of course, his rallies are never covered by the mainstream media for, whatever reason. And I think the best strategy is make sure she's the nominee first. And if we go back and look at Real Clear Politics, they're putting in a 90.8% probability that she'll be the nominee. So, okay, fine. But we're going to wait because there's that 10% of, it could be Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, Gretchen Whitmer. Who knows?
Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah,
And what's going on behind the scenes right now, we have no clue.
yeah, because all of these delegates, once they get to the convention, who I mean, they do have the in good conscience clause in the Democratic Party's rules.
Yes.
So while they're technically pledged to Kamala Harris,
But they're not.
nobody's
That's
holding
the thing.
nobody's holding a gun to their head, right?
They have not actually voted for Harris. They
That's
may have
correct.
told her, yeah, okay, I'll vote for you. But I don't know how enforceable that is because it wasn't the regular democratic process. This is all side deal stuff.
That's
And who
exactly
knows
right.
if they can go back.
None of
Right?
this. That's the weird thing. None of this has any legal force.
No.
In terms of the Democratic Party's own rules that would be
Right.
enforceable in a neutral courtroom, because the presumption is we're going to have a primary, the voters are going to decide, and the delegates to the convention are pledged to the choice of those voters. The Democratic Party has now invalidated the entire presidential primary process. And I don't
14, 15 million votes.
and I don't know of any way that they can enforce any sort of loyalty on Kamala Harris if those delegates get to Chicago, and whether we're headed for Chicago, a repeat of Chicago '68, God only
You know
knows.
we are. You know we are.
But when they get to Chicago, who knows what they're going to do? Because
Right.
they were pledged to Joe Biden. He's gone. If they choose Kamala Harris, okay, I guess they can do that. But if they don't, there's nothing that anybody can do. I think it would be hilarious.
I don't see any way to enforce a vote for Kamala because they never voted for Kamala. The one argument I think she could make is that, hey, we were part of the same ticket. They voted for the ticket. Okay. I think that's actually a colorable argument. Maybe it carries the day, maybe it doesn't. But I'm not so sure that's enforceable. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, we'd have to dig through the Democratic Party's rules, and I'm not sure that this is covered. It would certainly be covered if Joe Biden had died.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But I don't think
And maybe that's the way they would treat it. I don't know.
I don't think they have a rule that says what happens if we nominate somebody and then they just decide, no thanks.
Yeah,
and
they have
they
a
drop out
rule.
before the convention.
Because they're so good about following their own rules.
Yeah, well, there's that as well. But ultimately, I don't think it matters because even if she doesn't win a majority in the first ballot,
The superdelegates will give it to her. Yeah.
that's right. The superdelegates come in and then they get to pick the nominee.
That's how Bernie somehow won Iowa and got like almost no votes at all from the delegates.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting. Well, that was one of the reasons why they changed the rules. That was one of the reasons why the superdelegates can no longer vote in the first ballot.
That's right.
Because
they had to preserve the idea that it's actually democratic.
Yeah, the pre-2016 Democratic Party was, yeah, sure, win a primary, get your delegates, but we'll determine who the superdelegates
don't agree with you. You're screwed.
Yeah, you're screwed. So it's an interesting position. I think Kamala Harris ends up with the nominee afterwards because this has all been gamed out. That's the thing. We've been, the propaganda campaign, the talking points, it was all prepped so that we would have this seamless transition. Because if this was, if Joe Biden had just dropped out and caught everybody by surprise, we'd still be trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
It would have taken days for them to have their phone calls and talk and try to figure out what the strategy was. They knew what
I'm
it was.
really
before
curious
he dropped.
is whether or not the Democratic Party is polling their voters for interest in other possible candidates. Newsom, Whitmer, Shapiro, Bashir, hell, Pelosi, Clinton, I don't know. I'm kind of curious as to whether or not they're digging around trying to find somebody that will bring out the Democratic voters. I mean, Michelle Obama is an obvious one.
Except she says she doesn't want it under any circumstances.
She seems to have no interest whatsoever. And I say, thank you, woman.
Yes.
Because she would probably clean up.
Yeah, a grateful nation.
For the worst reasons.
A grateful nation appreciates that you've decided not to do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although probably not Democrats, because they would. If she hinted that she wanted it, it would be so hard for them not to give it to her.
Oh God, it'd be like that on a dime. They'd be all over it because they know, and I would agree with them. I think she'd win. I think she'd win in a landslide.
If they could find somebody they thought did better.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Everybody thinks that Kamala Harris has this in the bag now. And maybe she does. I don't know. Maybe they've decided this is the only choice we have. We have to go with her. It's not optimal, but we don't have any other choice. We know Joe was going to lose. Maybe she won't. And maybe she won't lose is the best argument they have right now. And maybe they've decided they have no choice but to stick with her.
I think that they're hoping that maybe she can push inside of the too big to cheat.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's what they're hoping, is that if she can stay within 1 to 2, even 3 points of Trump, then they can provide the other votes if need to be.
Yeah, but
I mean, think about it. Philly routinely has, for presidential races, 104, 105% of the voting population show up. There's Fulton County. There are places in Michigan and Wisconsin where they do these same things, and it's like,
yes, it's the same day voter registration,
right?
A system that could not possibly be
manipulated
in any way to fraudulently harvest votes. There's just no way.
I think that's the plan they have, is to try to get inside that OODA loop, and then they can do their magic. Right now, based on all the races we've watched for president, I would assume that Trump is actually more like 4 to 5 points ahead. Especially in the swing states, I think he's probably even further ahead. They've got a lot of ground to make up. And I don't know that Kamala can get them inside that OODA loop.
Not unless they can hide her to the extent that people don't actually learn anything about her.
Well, they did it with Joe in 2020. So you're saying that the bird flu is going to become an issue?
Well, yeah. Maybe. It's not too late.
Everybody needs to hide. Stay away from
It's not too late to have another pandemic. Although time is running out. No, I think the trick is to toss about 1,000 campaign consultants and script her to within an inch of her life. So that she gets up, says the appropriate things, shuts up, and walks away.
Venn diagrams. Who doesn't love Venn diagrams?
Yeah.
Scripting her, I'm not sure is going to work.
Well, they can't. The thing is, there's only 3 months.
And apparently, she doesn't even read the things that they give her.
No, of course not.
The complaint has been for ever since she became vice president that she doesn't read the daily briefings, and then yells at her staff because she wasn't prepared when she had to go out on Meet the Press or whatever, because she doesn't read the briefings.
Yeah, because she's both aggressively ignorant and arrogant.
Aggressively ignorant. I think that's a really good way to describe it. She doesn't have a base of knowledge to begin with, And then she is aggressively eschewing any new knowledge. She wants to think about it how she thinks about it, and she doesn't want anything to interfere with that.
It's called epistemic closure.
I remember that. Holy crap. How many years did we go through that with Atrios and
Yeah, but look, it's true. She just does not want to be told things that she doesn't want to hear.
yeah, that's absolutely right. And you can see it in her approach to Israel, to her approach to NATO, to her approach to the border. I mean, she has done literally nothing. She went and had a confab with, I guess at the time it was AMLO and whoever was in charge of Guatemala. Got nothing, solved nothing, put nothing in place, got no agreements, and then that was it. She just washed her hands of it for 4 years.
Yeah, well.
But she wasn't a border czar.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly, I think it was true to say that functionally she certainly wasn't, because she did nothing.
That's true.
On the other hand,
in reality, she was not. That's right.
on the other hand, vice presidents always do nothing. Vice presidents are never in charge of anything.
It's the easiest fucking job in the world, right?
I think,
you preside over the Senate. That's your you break high votes. And then you're given some stupid, social thing to like do. And, there are no, it's not a results oriented type of job.
No, not by any stretch of the imagination. I think, who was it that described the vice presidency as waking up in the morning and inquiring as to the state of the president's health, and then having the rest of the day free?
Yeah, pretty much.
Or as John Nance Garner, when he was offered the vice presidency in the 1930s to
Herbert Hoover?
No, FDR.
FDR,
said,
yeah.
The vice presidency isn't worth a bucket of warm shit.
I mean,
he's not wrong.
It's certainly not a high profile job. I mean, it's a high profile, but it's not really a job, I guess is a better way of putting it.
You are the backup quarterback.
Right.
So technically,
anybody who's seen Blue Mountain State would know.
Yeah, so
the backup quarterback is fine sitting on the bench.
Technically, you have to go to all the practices and learn all the plays. You just don't actually play. You sit on the bench. And
quarterback, you're okay, right? Like, you can play another. You're good. You're good. I think you can go back in there.
By the way, speaking of the propagandization, this is very interesting. Somebody pointed this out on Twitter earlier today. I saw this and I didn't quite believe it, and I thought I'd have to try it out for myself. So I'm going to do a little Google search.
Assassination attempt on Truman, Reagan. I don't know who the next one is.
Slovakia, Reagan, Lenin, Teddy Roosevelt. Okay, assassination attempt.
Nothing about Trump.
How about this? Okay, Truman, Ford. Okay, TRU, Truman, TRUM, Truman. Huh. Now, while I'm sure it was big news in the 1950s, whenever Harry S. Truman...
I don't even remember that there was. I didn't even know that there was an assassination attempt on Truman.
Truman, after he was reelected, set up a...
Dewey beats Truman.
Yeah, he set up a deal to rebuild the White House. So what they basically did is they had to go in and they gutted the White House. I mean, they literally left the outer shell standing and they gutted everything. They completely rebuilt the White House. In the 1950s, they added the Situation Room basement and all the other national security stuff. No, what happened was that since the White House was now, a shell, literally a shell, Truman was moved into Blair House on the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue. And one afternoon, 4 Puerto Rican independence activists with submachine guns just showed up at Blair House and started shooting up the place. and the Secret Service killed them all. And that was the assassination attempt on Truman. But that's not the most recent one. I wonder at the... I don't wonder. I know. But I find it fascinating that there are no automatic results for assassination attempt on Trump.
Mm-hmm.
That's really fascinating. I mean, you literally have
but not unexpected, though.
Yeah, and somebody had... Oh, and finally we get attempted assassination of Donald Trump. I mean, you can get there. They'll show it to you eventually, but boy, they don't want to. Well, now
what are they going to show you? I do see Fox News there, I think. And how many of them are, I've seen like some of the like CBS, NBC headlines where it's like exchange of fire. Trump falls and they take him off the stage. They have tried to downplay this as much as possible.
Right from the beginning. Well, this I found interesting. Now, I don't have Snapchat. Has a knowledge... Okay, fine. Community notes for the win. Snapchat has a knowledge cutoff date of October 2023. Okay, fine, because I saw this today where somebody was asking Snapchat AI about Trump, and it was saying, I haven't heard anything about it. Which, okay, fine. If they have a knowledge cutoff date of July 13th, 2024, of October 2023, they couldn't possibly know about something that happened on July 13th.
Well, why would it be that? Why would they cut it off there?
I don't know. That just may have been when they started training the model, so that was their cutoff date. So once they started training the model, they just trained it on the information that existed as of a certain date. And, well, it's Snapchat AI.
I'm not into this AI crap.
Yeah, it's not designed to return new stuff anyway. So, okay, fine. I saw that today. I'm glad of the community notes. By the way, Twitter and the whole community notes thing set up has just been...
Yeah, those are good.
Fantastic. Especially...
And they skewer everybody, too. It's not just going after lefty stuff. It goes after righty stuff. It goes after anybody.
Yeah, because it's user-driven.
Yeah, and what I like about it is that it requires enough people to basically upvote it. I mean, that's not really what happened, but to at least agree to it in order for it to be displayed. And I think that's a fantastic thing. Musk has done a good job with Twitter. There are still kinks. There are still problems. There are always going to be. But it's a much freer speech platform than it used to be.
Oh, very definitely. And that community notes feature I really like, because I was going to show that Snapchat AI thing and say that's very weird that Snapchat AI says, I don't know anything about an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Community notes, okay, well, this is their cutoff date on knowledge, so they couldn't possibly know. Great. So
that's a useful information.
That's useful information. Exactly. Now I have better context where I can understand that claim. And that's a claim made by libs of TikTok, who's definitely not a left-winger.
No.
And so these are fact checks I trust. The fact checks from Axios about, well, we've mistakenly called her the border czar for 3 years. That's not really a fact check. That's just a CYA.
Yeah, exactly.
However, the Google thing is still happening. You know, Chris and I were having this talk last night.
That's why I don't use Google.
On Twitter, you actually have two feeds. You have the algorithmically generated feed, and then you have a feed called following that will only show you a chronological feed of people that you follow. That's the only one that I use because that's the only one that I'm interested in seeing, because I'm the one who's decided what goes into it.
Right.
However, the following feed, or the For You feed, is algorithmically generated.
Right. So it
My,
goes basically by the tweets that get the most attention,
maybe.
or ones that are promoted and that sort of thing. Yeah.
But second of all, if you go to, I believe, Facebook, you can't even opt for a chronological feed of people that you follow. You get.
It's been a long time since I've been on Facebook, but
Yeah, I don't
it
use
was
Facebook
that
at
way
all.
last time I was on it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Facebook curates your activity feed.
Right.
And so basically does Instagram and Snapchat and most of the other social media networks.
Which are all part of is it Alphabet? No, Meta. Right? They're all part of Meta?
Instagram is part of Meta.
Facebook is
Facebook,
Snapchat. I don't know.
obviously
Snapchat.
Facebook is. Snapchat is not, or at least it didn't used to be. Here's the thing. The whole point of social media has turned into, and I understand it started this way solely for advertising and revenue purposes, but it has turned into, we will show you what we want you to see. And we will do everything we can without making it obvious to hide the things that we don't want you to see.
TikTok's the same way.
And here we saw just a few minutes ago, Google is doing exactly the same thing. You can ask about the assassination of Donald Trump, but you have to make it explicit because
it makes that feeling lucky button a lot more.
Yeah, well, it's all.
Do they even still have that? I don't even know.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and check. But I mean, it's all. Are you feeling lucky now?
Yeah.
And
well, the thing is, that's why I don't use Google, is because I know what I'm going to get. 10 years ago, I had such a hard time when I was still actually 10 years ago. Yeah, I was still writing then. I had such a hard time finding articles and things I knew existed. I couldn't find them with Google. I'd have to go 40, 50 pages to find what it is I was looking for because they wanted to push everything else to the front. And I was like, why can't I just get this thing? Nope, not allowed to.
Yeah, it's really interesting whenever you do a search on Google now, especially on almost any issue. What you get are at the very top a whole bunch of sponsored links.
Right.
Then you get whatever their AI says is the answer to a question if you ask a question. Then you get a whole bunch of links to YouTube for videos, which is owned by Google. And so the entire first page almost is either sponsored ads, AI-generated ads, or algorithmically generated search results, where Google has decided to label the credibility of the source to determine how high they sit on the search returns.
Well, they also get paid by those sponsors.
Yeah, well, the sponsor ones are just straight up sponsored links. They're just ads. They're there for money.
Right. Straight ads.
Yeah, but the organic results are returned.
Yeah.
Are returned by order of Google's assessment of their credibility.
Right.
And so, oddly enough, when you start doing like political searches on Google, you sure get a lot of political opinions that are not very far on the right side of the political spectrum. You can eventually find what you want if you're willing to thumb through till page, 33, but they are putting their finger on the scales.
Yes.
And
Zuckerberg bragged about this in 2020. Well, I guess after the 2020 election, he bragged about this. This was part of that whole thing that Time Magazine did, right? Or was it Newsweek? About the shoring up of the election, they shaded the news and the information in order to affect a certain outcome. And they were successful.
It's all propaganda.
Yep.
All of it. And we are being constantly propagandized. There are a couple of search engines like, I guess, Quant, which is run out of France of all places. Brave is coming up with their own search, although they're all kind of built on Bing, which sort of sucks.
Yeah.
They're not their own search engines. You know, the internet, it
Yahoo's
seems...
not actually all that bad.
Yeah, well...
It's not as... It's not as
comprehensive.
extensive.
Yeah. I just think it's fascinating how we have sort of sat back and watched a free and relatively open and unweighted and uncurated internet.
Well, let's be fair, though, Dale. I mean, we came up in the wild, wild west of, back in the mid 90s of being able to do these things, back when Alta Vista was like a real search engine.
Yeah, that was my favorite search engine for a while.
I mean, and it's come a long, long way. We're not in that era anymore. And
no,
information age,
we've allowed a tech oligarchy to take full control
absolutely.
over
That's
the
right.
internet.
That's absolutely right. There's really no question about it. And allowed, I don't know how much control we ever had over it, other than making choices. But I mean, Google was great for a really long time. It reached the top of the rankings because at first it was a really powerful algorithm that found things that were really hard to find. And then they started redefining how they're going to find things.
But they couldn't keep their hands off of it. First,
that's right. Yeah.
First, because it became important to use it as a revenue generation tool.
Right.
And so I don't like it, but at least I understand the incentive behind saying, look, we are going to have to put the first 10 links on your Google search as sponsored links. We got to make money. So we're going to put a little...
That part doesn't even really bother me.
Yeah, we're going to put a little...
I can see. At least they put it there. It says sponsored.
Sure. It's grayed out. You have to look at it carefully because it is intentionally designed to be a very subtle effect. It's gray. It's a light gray, but it says, sponsored. Okay, fine.
This is why I've never understood SEO companies. It's like, okay, so we're going to pay just like your other clients to get our link up there first. What if they're competing clients? How does that work? There's only so much space on the first page.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, the whole idea, and by the way, it was easy to, and that's the thing. That's the thing that Google has killed the entire SEO optimization network.
I agree. Absolutely.
Because you can't SEO optimize to have your Google Spider look at it and define your page as a relevant.
You can't put the white
result.
words in your website anymore.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, that's all gone now. That's done. And it's even more done now because of how empty the internet actually is. Because one of the things that these large language model AI systems have done is they've now just started to write content.
Yeah.
And the trouble is when you do a search now, a huge number of the search results you get are AI generated content.
Yep.
And that's not the way this was supposed to work. And AI has ruined the ability to not only to search for relevant information, but to actually trust that information.
Yes.
There is an astrophysicist, and based on some of the things she says in her videos, I'm going to assume that she's a raging lefty. But She does a lot of science communication stuff, and she has 2 videos, one of which is AI Doesn't Exist, which is hilarious and fascinating, but also frightening, in that she points out that AI doesn't have fidelity. You ask a question, and AI will go out and will look over the internet for a response. And so she gave the example of, you're a 5th grader and you have to do a report on Pocahontas. And you're supposed to go to the library and get a book on Pocahontas and read the book and write a report on the book. But you're lazy. So what you do is you go home and you open up Google and you say, Google, tell me about Pocahontas. And based on the information that you get from Google, much of it AI generated content, which, remember, has no fidelity, you write your report.
And we'll just make up stuff.
It doesn't even have to make up stuff. It just, because it doesn't know what is true and what isn't true.
Right.
So you submit your
information is information. There's no qualifications.
Right. So you submit your report to your teacher that you've written on AI, and you describe how Pocahontas was a Native American daughter of a chief whose best friend was a talking raccoon, and you have inadvertently now submitted the plot synopsis for the Disney film Pocahontas, rather than any actual historical information. But you're a 5th grader, right? You don't know that it's not really possible for Pocahontas to have had her, as her best friend, a talking raccoon. And also she could talk to the trees. But that's aside the point. Which is, fine if you're a 5th grader writing a report on Pocahontas and you actually write a report on the synopsis of the movie. Okay, that's embarrassing and you're going to get a bad grade, but it doesn't really matter.
Will you, though?
But here's where it does matter. What if I don't actually know a lot about some important political or social issue?
Right.
And I go into Google and I try to search to find out. And I find an article on a website that I don't know has been created by AI. I don't know whose articles are AI generated. And because AI has no fidelity, I don't actually know if what I'm being told is the truth. But here's the thing. Google told me it was the truth. Google said, look, here is an article that explains the answer to your question. And that article may or may not be true because AI doesn't vet itself for historical.
It could be from InfoWars or from
Active Blue or
Conspiracies Are Us or something. Who knows?
Or from Media Matters for America,
right, yeah.
Or what, you don't know.
Right.
So
you have no way to evaluate that unless you've actually, well, like we have. We've been doing this for a long time, and we've seen how these operations have grown and how they operate.
Right.
If you're brand new to it, you're a 5th grader. I mean, my daughter's rising 8th grader. She's pretty good about being skeptical, but how would she know? I mean, how would she be able to figure that out?
How would I be able to figure out as an adult,
right,
about issues of climate change or immigration or the Arab-Israeli conflict or anything else? There was a time when I could have searched the internet and I would have been reasonably assured that I was reading an article written by a human, and I. So
we need to go back to Funkin' Wagnalls and
that's the
Encyclopedia Britannica.
That's the problem. We are rapidly making the internet useless for any other purpose than propagandization.
I absolutely agree.
We are
spot on.
We are creating a propaganda machine out of the internet, and the only way, I would argue, it has reached the point that the only way that I can determine what the truth is not to find it on the internet, because I have no idea what the source of this information is.
Right.
I have no idea how reliable it is. I have no idea if it was written by a human or if it was aggregated by which it largely was. I think there is something like more than half of all articles on the internet are now written via AI. So,
I've seen that, yeah.
So every time a new article appears on the internet, there is about a 75% chance that it was generated via OpenAI.
Was it Sports Illustrated or some magazine admitted that, yeah, all of our articles are AI generated?
Yes. In fact, it's becoming kind of the standard way of doing things on a lot, especially.
And have you noticed if you go on Google,
especially on places like, and I don't know what the percentage is, but like Kotaku or Jalopnik or whatever that need to have a constant news feed, their shorter news stories are almost all written by AI.
I don't know if you noticed, but if you go on Google or even Bing, a couple other searches, the first thing that they want you to click, and so you have your first page, right? You do your search. The first thing, the thing that's most highlighted in like blue or whatever, is Ask AI. Like they're really, really pushing this stuff. And I won't use AI. Now, as a lawyer, I'm getting inundated with this stuff. I have pitches to me basically every day for LexisNexis, for Westlaw, for any kind of Bloomberg, any kind of legal search. They are pushing AI on me to answer these questions. And I simply don't trust any of it. I just want to do the fucking research. I can read a case and figure out what the hell I'm doing. I don't need the AI. I don't want the AI.
Well, you know, we talked last year about, was it last year or year before last, about the attorneys that went into federal court and submitted a brief to OpenAI.
Yes.
And it was, you know,
that case does not exist, sir.
Yeah, it cited like 3 or 4 federal court cases that just didn't exist. It just made them up from scratch. But as an illustration of what we're talking about, here we go. I just did a search. How much immigration does the U.S. have? Very first thing, AI overview. That's at the very top. Is this true? I don't know.
I have no idea.
It's something from the Pew Research Center that they list as a reference. And then they give me, you know, migrationpolicy.org as the second. And then I get what other people are asking. And then there does not appear to be any sponsored links on this, probably because most of the results are from, you know, nonprofit.
This is Google, right?
Yeah, this is Google. So I just did this search right now.
As of 20. No, that can't be right. 46 million. That can't be right.
13.8% of the country's population are forward born. A threefold increase.
That can't be right. That's not even, no, that's not even, look, illegal immigration over the last 4 years is something around the 15 to 20 million range. We let in about another million and a half refugees, green cards, you know, actual people who become citizens. Yeah, 43 million or 46 million. No, that can't be right.
Well, AI says it's right.
46.1 might be the number of actual foreign-born people in the country.
Well, that's what it says. The United States had 46.1 million foreign-born people.
Okay, yeah, all right, that's fine.
Is it true? I don't know.
I have no idea. And frankly, I don't even think our government knows.
Well, no, that's the problem. Our government doesn't know. All of this is made up bullshit. And there's nothing in here that says, by the way, this is a fucking estimate, because we don't know. Because
right.
How do we know the number of gotaways from the Border Patrol?
Yeah, we can't know.
We can't. because they're gotaways. They did not get caught. So do we know? I don't know. Maybe it shows up in the census every 10 years, assuming, but are these people responding to the census? If nobody knows they're here, probably not.
Well, yeah, that's always been the problem is well, Democrats cry and whine about this all the time. Well, they won't answer the census because they're afraid they're going to get kicked out. All the more reason to ask them, are they here legally or not?
Yeah, but see, here's the problem. It's 46.1 million. That is 13.8% of the country's population. Look, these are hard and fast numbers. How could I possibly argue with them?
Right. Yeah. You've got exact numbers there. Yeah. But are they real? We have no idea.
Yeah, because there is no indication here that this level of precision is literally impossible to come up with.
Yeah.
But that's fine. We now have an answer. We got it from AI, which got it from apparently.
I love the fact that it's still below the record high of 14-something% in 1990. Is that what that says, or 1890?
1890.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
There was no
when we didn't have
we had no welfare. We had no like almost anything at that point.
You came here and you succeeded, starved, or went back to.
You had better have some money to support you, a job, a family to shack up with. Otherwise, you're getting sent back home. And the 1890s, let's see, that was mostly when the Italians. It was mostly Italians, a bunch of Germans,
Irish,
and then
although the Irish mainly came here in the 1860s,
1840s to 1860s.
Yeah, potato famine.
It was mostly Eastern Europeans who were coming over at that time, which is when Chicago got all filled up. Yeah, that's. I don't know that that's real at all. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure I can square that with reality.
And yet there's such precision to the numbers. How dare you? How dare you?
But Google says.
Yeah, and that's the problem. That's the problem with
Google it, bitch.
With what we've done. We have let basically Google and Meta take control of the internet and largely take control of social media, although Google, their record in social media hasn't been all that great, except for YouTube. And
they still fuck with us.
Oh, yeah. We have a copyright strike warning for my incendiary language, which was literally reading from quoting a federal judge in a judicial opinion.
Well, see, this is where Elon Musk has done a lot of good, and I hope he keeps going.
Yeah, but look,
he seems sincere about it.
He's done a lot of good for Twitter, one platform which he took over from these.
One platform, right?
Yeah, Twitter by far isn't anywhere near the largest social media platform.
That's true.
And, the people who go onto Twitter tend to be, the terminally online. And it's certainly not a representation of how people as a whole are feeling because it is such a self-selected audience on Twitter.
Absolutely.
Google is far more important because it's not a particular...
What we need to get Elon to start a search engine. He could do that in his sleep, right?
Yeah, you would think he could. But here's the thing, YouTube 2 weeks ago. Remember, YouTube's motto used to be broadcast yourself. And it was all designed for...
Don't be evil.
Yeah, the average person to be able to upload a video and talk about whatever weird freaking niche interest that they have. For example, see my huge list of videos on my personal channel about Elite Dangerous, the video game. Okay, fine. That's not what it is now. 2 weeks ago, and YouTube has been doing this, especially to gun-related channels.
Censoring them?
Well, it's I guess you'd have to call it.
Downvoting them.
I guess you'd have to call it censorship, but it's the rules that apply to you. See, there's the community rules that apply to everyone, and then if you talk about guns, okay, you can't show loading a magazine. You can't show the firearm with the barrel pointed at or near the camera.
Well, it shouldn't be.
Some magazines you're just not allowed to show. So, high capacity magazines, you're not allowed
so like
to
a
show.
30 bullet magazine.
Yeah. You can't show how to make a gun. You can't, and now, as of 2 weeks ago, you can no longer link to any sponsor who sponsors your video if they happen to be in the firearms industry. So if you accept a video sponsorship, you can have that sponsorship and you can take their money, but you can't link to the sponsor in the video or
so
video
you can't
description.
actually advertise your own sponsor.
Sure, you can talk about them. You just can't link to them. You just can't
link to them.
You just so yeah, you
can
talk. So what is the point?
Verbally in your thing link to them?
No.
Like say, hey, go to blah 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 blah.com.
No.
You can't even do that?
Nope. You can mention that I'm being sponsored by Remington Ammunition, who provided the ammunition.
But you can't say remingtonammunition.com or something.
That's correct. And you can't physically link to them.
That's fucked up.
Which makes the sponsorship
kind of worth a lot less, right?
Yeah, worth a lot less. And so there are certain things, and by the way, we ran into this sort of censorship that YouTube puts in. So this quote that I talked about from the federal judge.
When was this? It was like back in October or something, right?
Yeah.
October, November.
Yeah, indicated that violations of rights might result in extrajudicial responses from the American populace. Okay. Well, certainly Google doesn't want to hear that because, hey, that might sound like a lot of Trump J6 bullshit, and we certainly can't have that. So that's going to be a violation of our community standards because you are promoting some sort of civil disobedience or civil violence, which you're not allowed to promote.
Dale, we're going to have to go back to pamphlets.
Well, that's the weird thing. How have we taken the internet, which promised to give us essentially the sum of the world's knowledge into our pocket?
Back in the 90s and even the early 2000s, most of the 2000s, that's what we had. Think about how free we were.
The information
we were able to talk about anything. And matter of fact, it was great. I brought up Atrios earlier. Atrios is diametrically opposed to us, right? And yet, how many times do we have fruitful conversations with people like him and others on the left?
Yeah, well, that was back when we talked about policy.
That's true. But even other things. And we also talked about ethics. We talked about philosophy. I mean, what was Atrios's immanentizing the eschaton, right?
Immanentizing the eschaton.
Right, which means hurrying up the end of the world. And Atrios was, what I liked about him was he was true to his principles, but he was at least solicitous of other views, and he, mostly took them on okay. I remember what's his face from Political Animal who went on to The Nation. You used to have some good arguments with him, and we actually were arguing. We were really getting down to the nitty gritty. Then all of a sudden, it just stopped.
Yeah, well, first of all, social media, I think, killed blogging. And
I agree.
Then social media and now Google, the internet as a whole, turned into a
It got so
propaganda.
consolidated.
Yeah, it got so consolidated it turned into what it is now, which is largely a propagandization tool. And
Yes.
you can't have conversations about certain topics
Right.
and expect to get returned in Google in the search engine. You can't talk about certain things on YouTube.
Yeah.
Facebook is even worse. If you talk about anything more offensive than fuzzy kitties and cute puppies, they are liable to come in and lower the boom on you and toss you off of their platform.
Yeah.
We took what was supposed to be a tool that gave us the entire sum of human knowledge in our pocket to a tool for combating disinformation.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's sort of like the consolidation of. I'm just thinking of a parallel here. So we used to have like what 50, 60 different car companies back in the tens, the teens, the
Through
20s,
the
30s.
50s, yeah.
Yeah. And they all got consolidated down to the big four, right? It's like, and then once we got to the big four, you didn't have as many choices as you used to have. Right. And it's sort of the same thing. Is like we had a really awesome time between 1995 and I would say like around 2010 when things started getting consolidated. And, yeah, we argued with each other vehemently at times. I mean, viciously at times. But it was just talk. And we went back and forth and there was no problem. And we engaged each other. We were actually talking to each other. We were disagreeing most of the time, but we were at least making our arguments to each other, and we had to deal with each other's arguments. When the consolidation started to happen, about the time social media started growing up, we lost that.
Yeah,
and the conversation stopped.
It's not the bad part is not that the conversation started or stopped, although that is bad objectively. The bad part is that the conversation can't happen.
Is not allowed to happen.
What if I want to have an open conversation about transgenderism or race or immigration?
You can't do that without a private channel. You can't do that in a public. You can't do it on Twitter. You can't do it on Facebook. You can't do it on Instagram. You can't do it on. Well, I don't know. I don't know anything about.
Well, Snapchat. You have a much better shot of doing it on Twitter, but I mean, outside of Twitter, Elon Musk era Twitter.
Fair enough.
And even then, there's some things that go on Elon Musk Twitter that raise my eyebrow. There are still people who lose accounts for weird stuff. I don't know if that's
true.
I don't know why that is true or what the deal is there, but it is
he hasn't been able to, excise everybody.
Yeah, perhaps, but
or
that
exorcise.
But it's still 1,000 times better than anywhere else that you
agreed.
That you can go, because now social media is kind of where whatever conversations take place, and there's no real place. And I would argue that even Twitter is not a place that you can really fully express your opinion. There's no place to do that anymore. We've lost
you
the
can't
ability
even
to
do
have
it
that conversation
in public anymore.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that
you are
true.
What's his face? The Billboard guy, Billboard Chris. He's Canadian, so he mostly goes to Canadian spots, but he goes to America as well, and he gets shut down all the time. What's his face? There's a bunch of these people who go, and I mean, honestly, they are trying to stir up shit. They are trying to create a bit of a shitstorm, but they're not being abusive or derogatory. They're just raising issues that are important that a lot of people are thinking about and that are being forced down our throats, at least one side of it is, and they ask questions and they routinely get ridden out. You're not allowed to do that. You're creating a disturbance. You're causing
you're causing people
disturbance.
you're causing people to feel unsafe.
Right.
Because that's become the new thing.
That's unacceptable. That is not America.
Everybody has to feel safe. Everybody has to feel
Show me that in the Constitution and I'll agree with you.
Yeah, except that's not in the Constitution and that's not the country.
Because it shouldn't be. I love how Jordan Peterson puts it, that, look, in order to communicate and challenge ideas, we have to say unsafe things. We have to say things that may not be acceptable. And if we can't do that, we can't challenge ideas. We have to risk being rude or unsafe or, whatever you want to call it, in order to get to the truth of things. It's absolutely right. There's no other way to do that. We've got to make people who are comfortable uncomfortable in order to get to the real point.
Well, look, some people are still allowed to do that.
That's true.
I give you the opening ceremonies of the
Oh my God. Was this one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen? I mean, you're not even, religious. I'm a Catholic. I see that and I look at that and I'm like, how fucking rude can you be? I mean, I'm not like, I'm not going to make a big scene about it, but it's fucking rude. And I loved how I think it was Archbishop of Paris said, I'll be impressed if they do that with Muslims.
Yeah, well, that was what I said, because you have this guy in France that said, we in France don't bow to religious extremists of any kind for any reason. We're a tolerant, open country that stands by the ideals of the Enlightenment.
Lying piece of
take
shit.
your bigotry elsewhere. Funny, I didn't see a representation of Muhammad in the big ceremony.
Yeah, right.
And we all know...
Mansumer.
And we all know why. And look, the issue is not just that if you were to have the temerity to show the Prophet Muhammad as a fat transgender prophet, that people would end up getting killed. The problem is that you know who the easy targets are. And so to be transgressive and to violate the norms and to critique society, you can do that as long as you pick the right targets, the safe targets.
And this is the Olympics. The whole point to the Olympics, the entire point to the Olympics, is to bring all countries together in solidarity for things that we can all get behind. And yet France chooses to be divisive because, like you said, easy target. I mean, fuck the Christians, even though France,
what are they going to do?
Almost in its entire existence has been a Christian country. It was the defender of the papacy. It was actually one of the major countries to protect the papacy. So fuck you, France. Another reason to say fuck you, France. Yeah. And this is California wine, by the way, France. Fuck you.
Yeah, see, certain people can get away with saying certain things on our newly propagandized internet, and they will suffer no consequences for them. Because the political class likes the things that they say.
Right.
The second that you step outside of that allowed consensus, well, you might, I forget, Jonathan Turley was contacted by one of these disinformation organizations.
Really? I hadn't heard this.
Yeah. They wanted to, in fact, I may be able to find it on, find his story on Twitter. Now, this guy is a law professor who has been pretty well respected for
He does not play sides. He is really straightforward. He's a liberal, but he doesn't let that cloud his judgment. He's more of a classical kind of 60s liberal.
Yeah, well, he got contacted this week by NewsGuard, who decided that they need to do an audit to him. So,
What?
yeah, NewsGuard, he says, not long after.
I've only recently heard of NewsGuard. This is a lefty operation, right?
Oh, yes. Their whole purpose is to rate for internet companies and for governments.
That's right. That's why I've heard of them.
The amount of disinformation that you are spouting on your
They're the
platform.
ones trying to put like the Federalist and any righty organization behind the wall. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So NewsGuard, so he wrote a hill criticizing NewsGuard because that's their purpose. I really am beginning to hate this thing. I guess I just better highlight it and make it go away. So their whole idea is to ensure that you don't get any advertising or any external funding by saying that you're just a wild-eyed conspiracy theorist. And so they're now doing that to him. They're doing that to his blog because, they think he may need to be blacklisted. And of course, he goes through this whole thing, but I mean, this is his whole point right here. This is the most effective way of silencing or marginalizing opposing views. That's their whole point. I don't agree with you. And so what they told him is that, there's nothing on your site that says you're a libertarian or that you might be a conservative. You should have some sort of banner telling people that. And as he asks in this particular article in The Hill, why would I do that? Because all of these left-wing sites, you're not requiring them to say, hey, we're raging lefties, so maybe, we're wrong too.
And Turley he doesn't fit into a category. He really does not, any more than you and I are doing. I mean, look, we've called ourselves libertarians, neo-libertarians. We don't really fit into a neat category. Matter of fact, I would be willing to bet that you and I, if we really got down to brass tacks, we might even be in a different category. I mean, we would agree on 99% of things, but we would still be in a different category. Why does he need to do that?
Because we need to ensure that the internet is appropriately propagandized.
Right, it's completely cleansed.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the direction we're heading. We've taken what should have been one of the most free and liberating things, and for a while was, and we've now put it under the control of corporations and non-governmental organizations like this one, whose sole purpose is to control what people see on the internet. And they can say that, well, we are trying to ensure that people don't see anything that might frighten or confuse them. But we all know what their real agenda is. But remember,
they never, ever take on the substantive arguments. Ever. This was, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember if it was in Rules for Radicals, what's his name? It may have come before that, but the idea that you don't attack the ideas, you attack the person, and you undermine their credibility. And what was it was a woman. Attack their motives, ascribe to them motives that they may or may not have, doesn't matter. But if you ascribe to them motives that are going to be seen as nefarious or evil or whatever, that's how you tie them to the bad ideas.
Yeah, and by the way, the American Federation of Teachers is pushing NewsGuard for schools.
Of course. I've seen this. my kids go to Catholic school. Well, my last remaining non-kid college kid goes to Catholic school, and actually, my older son, he goes to a Catholic college, and they, even in Catholic school, they pushed Newsweek for kids, and I quizzed them. I didn't. I didn't argue with them. I didn't challenge them. I just wanted to know what they were learning, and they push these things because most times these teachers have no fucking clue. They're just so naive, and they don't understand how much propaganda is actually out there. So they're like, well, this seems like a thing. Like Newsweek is like a pretty, mainstream thing, and this would be good. Oh, and CNN is the other one. CNN for kids. And they, try to get them to learn about current goings on. And I don't remember how many times I've had to correct my daughter. Like, well, no, that's what CNN says, but that's not what is actually going on. And luckily, she trusts me and is much the wiser for it. But it seems so innocuous, and yet it's not. It's like you said, it's propaganda, straight up propaganda. And we've been living in the propaganda age for I don't know, a good 130 years, maybe a little bit longer. We're also living in the information age, which exacerbates that propaganda and makes it that much harder to counter it.
Yeah, well,
except for, podcasts like this.
Yeah, but look, I mean, we exist at the sufferance of YouTube and Rumble. Now, we have never had a problem with Rumble.
Yeah, Rumble's they're not going to fuck with us.
Rumble sort of touts itself as a free speech platform. But, I can remember.
But how many people are on Rumble?
Yeah, well, that's the problem.
Probably magnitudes less than.
Yeah,
than
and whenever you and I talked about switching over to live streaming and just doing a video podcast instead of an audio one of the topics of conversation that we had was, how long will we last on Google?
Right.
Considering that we have a number of viewpoints that will simply not be favored by the powers.
Are going to be very counter to their feels.
And look, I pat ourselves on the back. We actually managed to make it through a year without getting a community guidelines warning. But that's our one warning. We just got
that one, yeah.
That's our one warning. And from there on, it then goes to strikes. And 3 strikes, and the channel just gets banned.
Right.
And so,
And we've been pretty careful. I mean, we've canceled a couple. Well, I know of one, and that was my fault, that we had to cancel because of words used, terms used. And we're forced to self-censor in order to satisfy people that we don't agree with, we don't have anything in common with.
And by the way, who disagree with us on matters of opinion, by the way.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's not this is what's so seductive about the whole disinformation industrial complex, as Michael Shellenberger calls it. They tell the public that, look, we're trying to protect you from people telling you wrong things, factually incorrect information. And you need to be protected from that because these lies can spread around the internet at the speed of light, and the truth takes days or even weeks to catch up. And in the meantime, your falsehood has been repeated 10,000 times. And the average person thinks and says, well, it may be good to have somebody who prevents people from lying on the internet.
One less thing I have to do, right?
Yeah, except the trouble with lying on the internet is the definition. And the definition of lying is you support policies that we think are incorrect. You have opinions that we don't like. And it very quickly, and in fact, I would argue was intentionally designed to be a tool for suppressing views, not for correcting lies.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. 100% agree with that. That was absolutely the purpose.
And
we've seen that over the last 8 years at least, if not more.
Organizations like NewsGuard exist solely to do that.
Yep.
And
what's that other one? There's that one in Europe, WGA or something. There's some clearinghouse organization that rates websites, rates advertisers, and tells websites that your potential customer who would advertise on your site may cause you a problem. You probably shouldn't deal with them.
And it's, by the way, so convenient to have these organizations because now governments can claim, well, sure, we fund them because we think they're doing good work, but they're the ones that make the decisions.
Yeah.
Of course, oddly, their decisions will always comport with what we want.
Who was Mary Poppins? What was her name? You know what I'm talking about. What was her name? She just lost a lawsuit. She was appointed by Biden to be the overseer of misinformation and disinformation.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about. I don't remember her name right off the top of my head, which I should because I ran across it this week. But yeah, that was her job, which basically...
That was her job. That was literally her fucking job.
Her job...
An anti-First Amendment job.
Her job, the singing censorship lady. Yes. And that's who she was. Yeah, the thing is, her job was even more pernicious than that. It wasn't just to track down lies and stuff on the internet. It was to track down...
to stop them.
It was to track down and stop opinions that contradicted whatever the government's preferred narrative was.
And that was during COVID hysteria.
If the government says it, then Lord, you know it's true. And if you disagree, you're spreading disinformation.
Right.
And look, governments will go to any length to stop things from being done that contradicts the policies that they want to put in.
Leviathan.
Yeah.
It says it right there.
We are 2 hours into this, so we're going to have to shut this down. So we're not going to have a lengthy conversation on this or perhaps any conversation at all. But I do want to point out to you that yesterday in London, there was a march whose primary purpose was about the dangers of this unlimited immigration, especially from Southeast Asia or Southwest Asia, of people who really hate Great Britain and who don't want it there. And these are all basically native-born British people who say the rate of immigration that we have is unsustainable. It is causing... This
has been Tommy Robinson's thing for, 10 years?
Tommy Robinson was the guy who organized it. And he had his little rally. And then...
He just got arrested in Canada like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, he got arrested last night by the Metropolitan Police.
He's always going to get arrested.
Yes, but
they just hate him.
But this
because
time,
he sticks up for actual British people.
Yes, but this time they're now charging him under the Terrorism Act of 2000.
Are they really?
Which means, among other rights that he no longer has the right to remain silent.
Right.
If they ask him questions, he is legally compelled to answer. Not answering is itself a crime. And so he has been arrested and charged, and at this point still has not received bail. And
any one of you out there in the ether here who don't understand how important, we're the only country in the world that has a First Amendment. Only country in the world that has a right to free speech, which includes the right to not speak. You don't understand how good we have it. And there's nowhere you can go. If we let this go, there's no place else you're going to be able to go and have those rights.
The Fifth
This is the
Amendment,
last bastion.
the Fifth Amendment specifically protects you from having to testify against yourself. And
Right.
we have it, Great Britain doesn't. So
Does
under the
not.
Terrorism
That's
Act of
correct.
2000, not speaking to the police is in itself a criminal offense.
Fucking tragic.
You are
That's absolutely
compelled
tragic.
to testify against yourself if they decide to charge you with a terrorism charge. And by the way, according to Tommy Robinson, who was able to make some contact with some people outside the police station, they told him straight up they don't have a specific crime for which they can charge him yet, but they are
Of course
questioning
not.
him. So hopefully, if they question
Hey,
him,
I mean, look,
he may
President
say
Trump
something
got
prosecutable.
charged on non-specific crimes. Tommy Robinson, who is he? Who cares? He's an Irish guy who has a
English
false
guy.
name.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, this is outrageous, and yet this is the MO. This is the world that we are living in
Yes,
now. The nail that
it's the
sticks,
world we were living in the 1700s as well.
yeah, and we're
And-
going back to that world. The nail that
Yes.
sticks up above the others gets hammered down. And
Right.
the whole point of arresting Tommy Robinson is, in fact, not because he's done anything wrong. I believe
No, it's
it
to send a
is.
message.
I believe it is, as the French used to so delightfully say during the Revolution,
Pour encourager les autres.
pour encourager les autres, to encourage the others. As people are being destroyed who speak up from chat. Yes, that's the whole point. Not everybody,
Yes.
just the ones who serve as a useful encouragement to send
Right.
a message.
Just enough to actually send the message.
So if
They don't
you,
have to destroy everybody. Look, 1984. The reason they went after Winston was because he was in a prominent position. He had a prominent mother. He was from a prominent family. You shut him down, you shut down the underlings. That's how they look at it. And that's exactly what's going on with all the international globalist elites. They want to shut down any challenge to their supremacy. And they're losing, at least here in America. They're starting to lose in France. Frankly, they're losing in the European Union. And there's some real question about how well they're going to do in Britain. So they know their ass is on the line.
yes, but at least in Britain,
under the skirts of Oz,
at least,
and we see the machinations.
yeah, but at least in Britain, they now have a Labour government who is good for the next 5 years. Despite,
I have a feeling the Labour government, they've already done a couple of surprising things. And I think the Labour government is going to be a little bit more conservative than they're expecting.
well, you would say that, but now they are looking at one of their first priorities, getting rid of the Free Speech and Academia Act, so that conservatives can be muzzled.
I'm not saying
in
they're going to be
academia.
perfect.
But look, again, from chat, a quote from Lavrenti Beria, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime."
Beria. Yeah.
Which is true. Show me the man and I'll show you the crime. If you live anywhere
That's been Trump's existence for the last 8 years.
yeah, and if you live anywhere in the West, by the way, that's your existence. You are probably
that's right.
You are probably, in America even, a federal felon. You don't know what crime you've committed.
Yeah, how old is that book, Dale? I can't remember who wrote it. But it was written like 2000, 2001 about how like you commit a federal crime every day. I can't remember what it's called. Shit.
Yeah, I can't remember it either, but yeah, that was the whole point.
You
of
know
the
what
book.
I'm talking about, yeah.
Because federal law is so extensive
It's so
now,
expansive.
and it is expanded by the thousands and thousands of pages of the Federal Register, which are just
the regulatory state. It's not the statutes. It's not what Congress created. It's what the regulatory state has created. That's where these issues come up. The Congress has so
abdicated its responsibility
to the executive action arm that these agencies have carte blanche to do whatever the fuck they want. EPA,
which was made worse by Chevron, by the way.
That's right. And thank God, and Gorsuch is a big part of this, that Chevron deference was gotten rid of.
And that
changes the ballgame.
That's a good move. But at the end of the day, the government will go. And look, I remain convinced, and I don't think you can convince me otherwise, that the January 6th defendants have been egregiously overcharged.
Yeah.
Even though they have really not managed to get almost anybody convicted for anything other than unlawful parading. But
other than Tirico, yeah.
It
wasn't even there.
Other than the Proud Boys guys. But, oh, by the way, the book apparently is 3 Felonies Per Day by Harvey Silverglate.
Yeah. Glenn Reynolds promotes it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely right. I've been on fucking radio in South Dakota talking about that.
But
Rob Port. You remember Rob Port?
Yes. But the thing is, it gives government the ability, like with the J6 defendants,
all
to
they
send
need is
a message.
Just a little sliver.
Yeah, and then they can send a message. If you decide to go against us, never mind what happened for the entirety of the past summer, where, cities were burned, cop cars were turned over, riots, never mind that. Those people get a free pass. You, on the other hand, the second you walked into Congress, Meemaw, we're going after your 68-year-old ass, and we'll put you in prison for 6 years.
16 years.
So
yeah, fuck you. And yet, when the pro-Hamas protesters took over, and I'm very familiar with this place, the square circle right
Union
in front
Square,
of Union Station, took down the American flags, burned them, put up Palestinian flags, clashed with police, beat some other anti-protesters. 11 of them were arrested and then let go. No charges. All charges dropped. What the fuck is going on in this country? What the fuck?
Yes, but if you ask that question, you're either a racist, a Zionist.
I'm a Zionist. I think the Israelis should have their own country. I have no problem with that.
Yes. Well, by the way, rocket attack from Hezbollah out of
saw that.
Out of Lebanon.
Okay, so we're
children
now
blown up.
2 hours. Are we going to go? Because we could. You and I are going to keep going about this for like hours.
Yeah, I just saw just before we came on that Israeli jets were reported over Beirut. So in the 2 hours we've been talking, as far as I know, we may have reached the next step in escalation towards World War III. And by the way, who did not meet the Prime Minister of Israel when he landed? Neither the president, nor the vice president, nor the Secretary of State. I guess they expected him just to
and yet
pick
when
up
BB
a taxi.
goes to Mar-a-Lago, is greeted warmly by Trump. And is this a Logan Act violation?
Yeah, the Logan Act. Yeah, we're back to the Logan Act.
What's the meme with the butterfly? Is this
the Logan Act? Yeah, exactly. We could talk the last 2 weeks.
And we do. That's the problem, is like, it's just you and I.
We can't.
We're going to talk for like 4 hours.
This is the trouble with this podcast. There is literally too much to talk about for the time.
And especially since we've been off for a while and a lot has happened.
Oh, yeah. We took a week off. Now all bets are off. We could sit here and talk for, hours and hours and hours on stuff. And
dude, I hate to inform you, I may not be able to do next week. I think I can. I'm pretty sure I can. I'm going to be in San Diego. So that means 5 o'clock time for me. Right?
Okay, yeah. That's what time it is for me.
I think I can do it, but I may be stuck in a deposition. I'm not sure. I'll let you know. Okay. I want to do it. I really, really want to do it.
All right. Well, let's hope that we can get... It's Sunday. You're doing deposition on Sunday? You know what? I don't even want to know.
It's deposition prep.
Oh, okay.
The deposition is on Monday. And it's my wife.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. I get you. I understand. Well, look, hopefully we'll see you next week. If not, we don't. That. The world is what it is. Life is what it is. We'll figure it out. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week, brother. Hopefully. Love you too, bud. All right. Well, that means that we are done for the day after 2 hours and, well, it's not 2 hours and 10 minutes because we were about 5 minutes late because we weren't even going to do this, I didn't think, right up until 3 or 4 minutes before the podcast. But we did it. It's done. It's in the can. We'll talk to you next time. So long.